I am back with the legend himself, Rabbi Shmuel. We don't call him Shmuel anymore. He's too professional for that. He is an author and a writer, and we can't call him by the name that when we grew up. He was a kid. He was one of us. We called him Shmuley, but now he's Rabbi Shmuel Botnick. He's here. He is fresh off having a new baby with a minor assist from his wife, of course. His son Moshe Botnick, is only a few weeks old, and Rabbi Botnick was very eager to join the podcast. He's like, I'm done with the baby. I'm not going to change the baby's diapers. I'm wake up in the middle of the night. We got to get back on the podcast. So he was eager, and we're so excited to have him back. Welcome, Rabbi Botnick, back to the podcast. You prepared a dandy for us, I am sure, even though I've not actually looked through the notes, so I don't really know. But based upon previous behavior, previous performance, it is indicative of future results, and I'm sure it's going to be a dandy. Welcome back to the show, Rabbi Botnick.
Thank you so much, as always, Rabbi Wilby. Please call me Shmuley. Um,
I guess on the podcast you could still be Shmuley.
yeah, the podcast is one big happy family. Yeah, and Moshe, Moshe, our Moshe, was named after several different people. Most prominent among them, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Because he was born in Parshas Bo, and that's this podcast. Actually, Moshe Rabbeinu will be very central. So I don't feel like I'm really neglecting my baby, Rabbi Wilby. I think it actually serves to his benefit, because I'm going to be talking about his namesake.
He's not neglecting
Um,
the baby, but he's been spending a lot of time in the office and want to record more podcasts to add some extra scholarship.
That's right. All right, so Shvat, let us get into it.
So Shvat
As
is
we
that's
know,
the current Hebrew month. Is that
that
right?
is a current Hebrew month.
Okay.
Yes, Shvat. As we know from previous podcasts, every month, every one of the 12 months corresponds with one of the 12 tribes. It the exact order of that, we've discussed this, is not unanimous. There are different ways of calculating it. Without getting into the weeds, the Arizal has his own calculation, and according to that, Shvat will correspond with the tribe of Asher. Okay,
12 tribes, 12 months. The month of Shvat is the tribe of Asher.
Asher, that's right. Now, every month also has its zodiac sign, and the month of Shvat is Dali, which is Dali is a pale. I don't know what the professional term for that would be in terms of the zodiac. Is that the Little Dipper?
I don't know. They didn't teach me much about that in rabbi school.
I
Uh,
don't know what that is,
we
but
don't know. We don't know. Send it email it to us.
it's called Dali, which is a pale. All right.
I can Google
Now,
it.
what we haven't discussed that many times, I think it's come up a few times, is that every month also has a letter, a specific letter.
Aquarius.
What's it called? Aquarius?
Aquarius.
Aquarius. Okay.
Deli, a bucket, aka Aquarius.
Okay, so Aquarius is the zodiac sign of the month of Shevat. And in terms of the letter, and I think the letter here, we're going to try and find its significance, which I don't think we've done in other months, is the letter of Tzadi. Tzadi, which is towards the tail end of the Jewish alphabet. And somehow it connects with the month of Shvat. So we have here the tribe of Asher, the zodiac sign of Aquarius, and the letter Tzadi. Sounds good?
Let's go.
Okay. The month of Shvat is actually a very special month, and that is explicit in scripture. Because in Parshas Devarim, the very first pasuk, actually not the first one, but from the very first psukim in Parshas Devarim, it tells us that at the beginning of the 11th month, that's us right now, the 11th month, Moshe Rabbeinu began to share all of the Torah. Basically, he repeated all of the lessons learned in the previous four books of Moses. He began to explain them, extrapolate upon them during the month of Shvat, extending a little bit into Adar. We know he passed away on the seventh day of Adar. So the bulk of it happened in Shvat. And And that tells us something about this month, right? That it's a very special month. And again, I told you I'll be speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and you see that Moshe Rabbeinu is like really in the spotlight throughout the entire 30 days of Shevat.
So the Torah does not actually use this term Shevat. It's not a biblical term for the months, but the Torah does number the months. So the first month is Nisan, which is the month of the Exodus, and thus if you fast forward all the way to month number 11, it's Shvat, and the final one is month 12, which is Adar, which is the upcoming month, and the beginning of Deuteronomy, which the word Deuteronomy actually means Mishnah Torah, the repetition of the Torah. Moshe begins his speech to the nation 37 days before he passes on the first day of the month of Shvat, which is the month that we are currently in, month number 11, the month associated with Aquarius and tribe of Asher and a bucket or a pail.
Correct. Okay. Um, but to understand the significance of Shvat, I think a nice passageway would be to understand a little bit about Usher. And we do know a few things about Usher. I want to begin with something that's obscure, but it's found in multiple sources. I think it's sourced all the way back to a medrash, albeit perhaps an obscure medrash, that the verse in Vayechi, when Yaakov Avinu gives blessings to all of the tribes, he says of Asher, "May Asher shemena lachmo." From Asher, there will be like the word shemena means fat, oily, but in this context, I think it means like rich, rich bread. Okay. Um, and Rashi over there explains that there's really two things going on, that Usher will have a lot of oil, and Usher's fruits and his produce will also be very rich in that sense. So that's the bounty, that's the bracha that is attributed to Usher. Now, what this medrash tells us is that anytime someone learns Mishnayos, okay, Usher, so to speak, like will speak in his defense. Someone who learns a Mishnayos, I think that Usher will stand by Gehenim and say, you can't let him into Gehenim because this person learned Mishnayos. Now, where do they get it from? Because May Usher Shmeina Lachmo, the word Shmeina is the letters Mishnah. Okay, it sounds really bizarre. It's like a play on words. You just take the same letters, you mix them up, and therefore we glean from that Usher had this special connection with Mishnah. I want to try to unpack it a little bit and understand that there actually is a very direct connection between Usher and Mishnayos, and specifically this word Shemena. It's not just a play on words, but the idea of oil and the idea of again this richness in a food is connected to the idea of Mishnayos. That's kind of the path.
The word Shmena, which means fat or rich, has four letters, a shin, a mem, a nun, and a hey, which if you scramble and jumble those letters, you could rearrange them as Mishnah or as Neshama, right? We know that Neshama and Mishnah are the same letters, and that's why it's a tradition to learn a Mishnah for someone's Neshama. So you're saying Shmena, which means rich, fat, oily, somehow that's associated as well with Mishnah. And the question is why? Like, what's the connection between Mishnah, which we know that's the corpus of our law, right? Our law, the oral Torah, the laws of the oral Torah are the books of the Mishnah, the 63 books of Mishnah divided into 6 orders of Mishnah, written and overseen at least by Rabbi Judah the Prince. Like, what does that have to do with Asher, with oil, with Shemena? That's the question.
That's right. And Usher, the theme of Shemin comes up with Usher again, all the way at the end of the Torah, when Moshe Rabbeinu gives his blessings. Again, he evokes Shemin. His term is V'toval b'Shemen raglo. It says there's a few things about Usher. It says Yehi Ritzoy Echav. His brothers should he should be found like favor in his brother's eyes, and V'toval b'Shemen raglo, and his foot should be immersed in oil. But again, oil being a very big theme in relation to Usher, which needs to be explained. And additionally, going to throw in there, Rashi comments, quoting Chazal, that Usher has another interesting blessing, and that is his daughters will be uniquely beautiful and will marry into the families of Kohanim Gedolim. They will marry Kohanim Gedolim. Okay, interesting. So again, we know about Usher that he's got a lot of oil, and he's got this interesting relationship with the Kahuna Gedola. Cool?
Yeah, and the high priest, I'm looking at your notes here. the high priest is also, of course, consecrated, anointed with oil,
With oil, excellent. Yes,
oil,
yes,
right?
exactly.
So the
Yes,
oil actually spills over to his son-in-law, so to speak. The sons-in-law of Asher, the ones that marry his daughters, the daughters of this tribe, they're the high priests who are anointed with the special anointing oil made of olive oil, which is plentiful in the lands of Asher.
correct. So now, just off the bat, right here, I think we could already explain why it is the month of Shvat in which Moshe Rabbeinu teaches all of the Torah. And that is because, Rabbi Wilby, this is going to be a quiz question to you. The entire book of Devarim it has a special title in Chazal. Do you know how we refer to it?
Well, I referred to it, I think, earlier, Mishnah Torah, right?
Mishnah Torah, exactly.
Yeah,
Mishnah Torah, which means
repetition of the Torah, right?
repetition. But look at that word, Mishnah, right? You see that word Mishnah. And that's the same word of Shmena, right? This theme of Shmena in Usher, which we already learned can be rearranged, those letters can be rearranged to read Mishnah. It's of no coincidence, I think, that the month of Devarim, which is Usher's month, which is that month of Shmena, is also going to be the month of Mishnah Torah, correct?
Yes, even though the word Mishnah, Mishneh are different words, right? It's the same letters, but the larger point is true that if the repetition of the Torah begins in the month of Asher, and Asher is Shmena slash Mishnah, well, it's called Mishnah Torah or Mishneh Torah, the repetition of the Torah, not a coincidence. This is all part of the theme of the month and of the tribe.
Correct. Okay, but I want to explain that on a deeper level. So there's an interesting Medrash Rabbah, which tells us that the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu beginning to share the Torah in Dvarim is that listen, this is fascinating. It's way back in the beginning of Shemos. Moshe Rabbeinu tells God, "Lo ish devarim anochi." I'm not a man of words, and therefore I can't deliver your message to Paro and whatnot. So the Medrash seems to find that as a contradiction to the Devarim, because Elah, what do you mean you're not a man of words? You get up there for 36 or for 37 days. All you're doing is speaking words. The entire book of the fifth book of the five books of Moses is called Devarim. It's called words. And it's all Moshe Rabbeinu talking. So how can you say Lo ish Devarim anochi? You are like the ultimate ish Devarim. So the Medrash says, Ad shelo zacha Torah, before Moshe Rabbeinu merited the Torah, he says, Lo ish Devarim anochi. I'm not a man of words. Once he was zocha to the Torah, he merited the Torah. Nisrapa Lashono, his tongue was healed, and he began to speak Devarim. Okay, so well, maybe you can take us through this because I'm not nearly as good a teacher as you are. The idea of Moshe Rabbeinu not being a man of words, and the Psukim explain he had this blemish in his tongue, in his mouth. Have you ever discussed this on the
We're
podcast?
told, yeah, well, everything's been discussed in the podcast. Not that I remember, or anyone else remembers it, besides for the archivists. But when Moshe is initially told or is nominated by God at the burning bush to go save the Jewish people, he launches an objection and says, well, I'm not a man of words. I can't speak. I can't communicate. At least that's the simple interpretation. I cannot articulate what I want to say. I'm not a man of words. I have a heavy tongue. I have a heavy lips. I have a heavy mouth, meaning he's not able to speak properly, to be the voice of God, so to speak. And then he repeats this in Parashas Va'era when God sends him a second time. After the first time, it flops, right? He comes to Pharaoh with Aaron, and Pharaoh says, no, I'm not going to release them. I'm going to make it worse. I'm going to exacerbate the servitude. And then 6 months later, they go back a second time, God tells them to go back a second time, and again Moshe repeats this, and again God says, well, Aaron will be your spokesman. But afterwards, meaning after this period, after they leave Egypt and they are eating the manna, drinking the water, and they have the Torah, at the end of the Torah, suddenly Moshe is a man of words. What changed? You're telling me what changed is that at Sinai, that's when the transformation happened. At Sinai, before
I'm not.
Torah,
No,
Moshe was not a man of words. After Torah, he was.
yeah. Well, so that's going to be one of the problems because the Medrash says up until he was zocha to the Torah, that would mean 40 years earlier already, right? Because we're holding at the very end of his life. So that's one of my questions. What's going on here? What does it mean that he wasn't able to speak words until now, right? The 11th month. He dies in the 12th month in Adar. On the 11th month, suddenly his mouth opens and he's able to speak.
Well,
Um,
no, but wait, who's to say that that's when it started? Maybe it started after Sinai. Well, I am recalling a maybe a midrash that talks about Jethro, Yisro, when he appears and he is wowed by all the miracles that God performed for the Jewish people, the war against Amalek and the Exodus and so on, splitting of the sea. The Midrash says the thing that most impressed him was the change that happened in his son-in-law in Moshe, because Moshe was completely incapable of communicating verbally, and that changed. So that's the way I understand it is that it happened. That happened earlier. He was already healed. Maybe the full manifestation of it does not reach its apotheosis until the book of Devarim, but it actually the transformation happened earlier.
Okay, it's cool. So I'm really glad you brought up that medrash because that actually brings me to one of the points I want to raise. There's a whole story behind the blemish in Moshe Rabbeinu's mouth, and Yisro actually is a central player in that story. To make, I guess, a long story short, or a pretty short story even shorter, Moshe Rabbeinu, as a little child, the Medrash tells us, was sitting on Paro's lap. He removes the crown from Paro's head, puts it on his own head, and all of the advisors are kind of creeped out by that. They feel like it's an ominous sign that Moshe Rabbeinu will be removing the kingship from Paro and taking it for himself. So it's Yisro actually who comes up with this idea where they place a plate of gold on one side and a coal on the other side, and they say, "Look, we're going to see if he's a little baby basically. So let's see if he actually has the maturity to make these kind of symbolic moves." Um, so Moshe actually was about to reach for the gold, and along comes Malach Gabriel, pushes his hand towards the coal. He then takes the coal and places it in his mouth, and he is thus burnt. He is scathed, and the Medrash says because of that, he says Kvad Peh Kvad Lashon. I have this handicap. I'm unable to speak. And so I didn't know this measure that you just mentioned, but it's interesting because Yisro was right there. So it could be he almost felt like guilty about this because he caused it. Um, but that is what the Medrash tells us regarding Moshe Rabbeinu's inability to speak. Now, what I want to touch on that is that there's a whole long like thesis and theory I've heard from multiple different sources about this idea of Moshe Rabbeinu's inability to speak. And they see a lot of depth into this. Okay, maybe we could devote an entire podcast to this. But in a nutshell, the idea is that Moshe Rabbeinu's his perception of Torah was so high and was so lofty that he wasn't able to condense it into words. Okay, and that's what it means when he says, "I'm not a man of words." It's this idea that his his concept of Torah is so deep, it's beyond communication. Have you ever heard of that, Rabbi Wolbe? Because
I think we might have spoken about it in the podcast at one point. I don't know if with
okay,
you. I think you mentioned it in the podcast. The idea is that there's no point of reference. Like a communication is you and I both have a similar vocabulary and a similar understanding of what words mean, and thus we can take an idea that's in our head and translate that into words, so that way I can communicate an idea to you and vice versa. But if the ideas are so lofty, there's just no tools, there's no words grounded in this world that can possibly capture the meaning of those ideas. Well, there's no connection between language and those and the knowledge that Moshe had. Is that the idea?
correct. Yeah, in a nutshell.
So
And
it's not like he had just some sort of speech impediment. He had a cleft lip or some sort of a stutter. It's not what it is. It means it's a much more of a loftier understanding of what this means, that he was not able to communicate because of the gulf between the knowledge that he had and the paucity of words that can possibly capture the meaning of that. And people say when they have not endorsed by anyone at the Torch Center, and Rabbi Botnick is still a lawyer and he'll give me all the disclaimers. But if people take like psilocybin or mushrooms and they have these experiences and they can't possibly find words to communicate it. There's no words that they have. There's no vocabulary that they have to possibly assign a word to what they went through. No, we don't endorse it. We don't accept it. We don't promote it. Speak to your physician or your guru. But that's the same kind of idea that there's something which is so such an experience that there's no overlap between that experience and the body corpus of words that we have to utilize.
Right, but what's important to point out is that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Hashem, when Moshe Rabbeinu says this, he says to God, "I can't do it. I have the speech impediment." Hashem is upset at him. He says, like, "I want you to do this, right? I really would have preferred you do this." Meaning, I could have endowed you with the capability of taking even your lofty ideas and condense them into words. I could have done that for you, and you failed, right? Because you weren't willing to step up to the task. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu Hashem assigns Aaron a Kohen to do the job for him. One of my favorite gematrias is that Aaron is gematria Devarim. So again, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "I am not a man of Devarim." Hashem says, "All right, you forfeited your ability to speak Devarim. I'll assign Aaron. Aaron being gematria Devarim. Aaron is those words that Moshe Rabbeinu should have spoken."
I just did it both 256.
256. Now, for many years, I had this. I was bothered by this question, which is, we know all of Torah is true. All of Torah is one. There's no real contradictions in Torah. There could just be apparent contradictions. And how can it be that you have these very deep philosophical ideas about what Moshe Rabbeinu's inability to speak, and it's not referring to a physical blemish, as you said. And then you have this medrash, which honestly, even my 5-year-old kid learned and came back from school all excited about this idea with the coal and put it in his mouth. I mean, are we discounting that medrash? Right?
That's a question that we have to ask with many midrashim. Because a medrash is not there to tell us a story or history. It's there to tell us an idea.
Right. So I want to suggest something. Rabbi Wolbe, I really need your help to develop this because I feel like I'm onto something, but I don't have something complete. And here it is. Here it is. That the Mishnah in Avos tells us regarding the words of the Chachamim, right? When Chachamim speak words, it says, L'chol devreihem. Okay, remember, it's a term of art here. Divreihem, devarim, words, right? The means of communication. L'chol devreihem kegachalei eish, like coals of fire. Their words are like coals of fire. Now, Rav Mendel Shklov, who's one of the students of the Gra, he explains what is this idea of coals of fire. He says, he says, fire, you cannot hold fire in your hand, right? But you could hold a coal in your hand. You'll get burned, but you'll hold a coal. So he basically, I think what he's saying is, Torah Shabal Peh, right? This is what it all comes out of. The Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, I can't perform Torah Shabal Peh. To me, it's all going to be like Torah Shabbat Ksav. It's just going to exist, but it's not going to be communicated. So he says, what Torah Shabal Peh is a gacheles to retain that fire of Torah itself. There's Torah itself, and then there's its means of communication. And the metaphor for that is fire vis-a-vis a coal. A coal is the words in which the fire is contained. So what I want to suggest is that these two ideas are one and the same. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, I'm not a man of words, i.e., my ideas are too lofty. They're too fiery to condense into words. That's the same Moshe Rabbeinu who gets burnt by a coal. A coal being those very words that contain fire. Do you get where I'm going?
The classic Botnick connection. This is why we hired you. This is why we want you to come on the podcast to make the connection. Yeah, well, listen, the Torah is compared to fire in many places, right? Torah is black fire atop of white fire. right? When the Demai gave the Torah at Sinai, it was with fire. It was amidst fire. And when the sages were studying, waiting for the bris to start, there were rings of fire surrounding them. And when the other sage would study, there would be a fire that burned the bird flying overhead. A Torah is fire, but fire cannot be captured unless you have a burning, flaming coal, which is a way to kind of package up the fire. And what you're telling me is that the words of Torah, what you're telling me that's the oral Torah, right?
Yeah.
They are like a little package, of fire, and that's kind of maybe symbolized by what Moshe was doing when he was putting that in his mouth.
Correct. So I
I
don't have
guess what you're saying is before the Torah was given, it was not possible to translate that. Listen, I think of Torah as Moshe going up to heaven and getting the Torah from heaven and bringing it down to us. So before the revelation, before the transformation, before Moshe ascended the mountain and bringing the Torah down to us, well, the Torah was just in heaven. So there's no overlap between the Torah in heaven and Torah down here. So it's you're putting the coal in your mouth, and there's just no way to do that. That doesn't work. But what Moshe did by giving us the Torah, by going up to heaven and bringing it down to us and formatting it for us, he made it that we can actually use our mouth, use our tools of communication to convey the words of Torah. Yes, the words of the sages are coals of fire, but it won't burn you because we've been elevated. We've been elevated. Torah has been reduced. There's a certain, so to speak, touch point where we can have with Torah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a nice way to.
I don't know if it's necessarily written Torah versus oral Torah. It's the Torah of fire, and we have the ability to somehow absorb that, either because the Torah was brought down to us, or maybe we're uplifted. We experienced Sinai as well. We were transformed. We became like angels. We became fire breathers ourselves. And maybe that's why no longer is it damaging to us. No longer is it fatal to us to try to communicate words of Torah, to try to imbibe burning coals of fire because of the Sinai revelation.
Okay, so okay, right. So you're working with the Sinai revelation, but I want to. So I do feel like the Medrash is implying that something happened here on the first day of Shevat. After 40 years of traveling in the desert, something happened. And I want to read to you the words of the Chidushei Arim, because again, I'm not necessarily understanding it, but this is what he says. He says that for 40 years, until the 40th year, Moshe Rabbeinu, throughout the whole 40 years, was still a process of Moshe Rabbeinu receiving Torah shebiksav. All right? However you understand it, because I thought he received everything on Har Sinai. I don't know. Maybe the ideas were getting more fully developed throughout the course of the 40 years.
Written Torah was only what was incrementally. The Gemara says that, right?
Right.
The Torah tells the stories of the events that hadn't even happened. The original giving of the Torah was the oral Torah. The written Torah came first, which is, to me, this is always a very important point for people to understand. We think of the written Torah as being the source material, and the oral Torah is like the interpretation. Chronologically, it happened the opposite, right? First, we got the oral Torah, and only at the end of Moshe's life, after he's been teaching us Torah for 40 years, only then do we get the written Torah. And Moshe himself only wrote the Torah incrementally. The question is, did he write it Megillos? Did he write Chasuma Nitna? Was it big chunks, or was it, more sporadic or episodic, or in a staggered way? But the oral Torah actually preceded the written Torah, which we got over time.
Okay. All right. So you're going to have to figure out how to reconcile that exactly with what his words are. Because here he continues. And he says, after the 40 years, Nishpa bo mabua Torah shebiksav im Torah shel Baal Peh. He says, after 40 years, they came down the special shefa. How in the world do you translate the word shefa? The special spiritual charge.
Vitality, abundance.
Abundance, again, but divine, coming from heaven, of a symmetry of Torah shebiksav and Torah shel Baal Peh. Now let me explain to you what he means, okay? Devarim is fascinating in the sense that up until now, anything that Moshe said, it was always Vayidaber Hashem Moshe. Hashem directed Moshe Rabbeinu to say this, always. Here in Devarim, it says Ela Devarim Asher Diber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe spoke. It does not say Hashem told him to speak them. So these are ideas that Moshe Rabbeinu actually formulated himself, and somehow they made it into being a part of the Torah Shabbat. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu reached this point. He was so sublime, he was so perfect, that his own words were able to become words of the Torah themselves. His words were like adopted by the words of the divine. Does that make sense?
It's always an important thing. I just to one level below what you're saying is that the words were originally said by Moshe, but words said by Moshe are not necessarily part of the Torah. Moshe might have had conversations that we don't know nothing about, right? Moshe and his adopted Egyptian mother. I'm sure they talked at some point. Torah doesn't tell us that. There's very few words that Moshe says that are actually canonized by the Torah. Moshe tells the Egyptian, why are you striking, or tells the Jew, why are you striking, which one, why are you striking your fellow man, right? That's a word of Moshe, but when the Torah writes it, the Torah is kind of saying the words of Moshe are now upgraded to now being words of the Torah. But here you have a whole body of a message of Moshe, which typically is prefaced by saying, God tells Moshe, say this and this and this. It's not prefaced by that. Moshe said it, and then post facto, God said, okay, those words are going to be enshrined in the Torah, in the written Torah.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that Moshe's own way of thinking and speaking and communicating and articulating at this point has become parity, so to speak, with God. And thus, it could just be wholesale adopted by the Torah, copy, paste into the Torah.
Right. But and the way the Chiddushim says this is that this is the coming together of these two forces of Torah Shabbat, being the written law, and Torah Shabbat Peh, which is our ability to create Torah itself. And he says like this on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, the lowest of Moshe Rabbeinu, the idea that he was unable to speak Torah Shabbat Peh because it was too lofty. He was only like a Torah Shabbat man. He was only like the actual fire of Torah itself. That is now transformed, and he's now finally able to speak words of Torah. The Moshe Rabbeinu, the coming together of these two worlds of Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh occur on the first day of Shvat. And that's
so
the
we
healing.
We could reconcile both of these different opinions, right? We could say that Moshe originally, before the revelation at Sinai, couldn't speak any words of Torah. It was like trying to swallow coals of fire. At Sinai, he was able to communicate the words of Hashem, of God Almighty, but he still was not at the level where his words were words of Torah. And that came on the first day of Shvat.
Correct. Now, I want to suggest that now that we understand that, so Shvat is this month of Torah Shabbat Peh, and it's this month of Moshe Rabbeinu's ability to speak Torah Shabbat Peh.
Torah means the oral Torah. Is that how you would translate?
Oral Torah. Yes. So it's oral Torah versus written Torah. Torah Shabbat Peh. The word Peh means mouth, and Torah Shabbat Ksav means written. So I want to say that that's symbolized by the bracha, the blessing that Asher receives. So again, Asher is the month of Shvat because Asher, it's all that oil. He gets all kinds of oil, and his fruits are rich with oil. Oil, again, I can speak about this for a long time, but oil represents Torah, represents Chachma. Okay, the source to find this most explicitly is the Bnei Yissaschar and Kislev. We talked about they found that little flask of oil. They lit the menorah with oil. He explains that this is all really symbolic of what was happening during that period, which was almost immediately after. Well, I shouldn't say immediately, but this was shortly after the end of the days of the prophets, right? The Hanukkah story. And that's when they found the oil, meaning it was a new era in which the rabbis would start developing the Torah and they would start recording the Mishnayos, right? This was all during the Hanukkah period. Shemen, oil, olive oil, represents Torah Shabbat Peh, the ability to produce your own Torah ideas. Okay, that's symbolized in the oil. So it makes a lot of sense, right? If I'm right here, that Shvat is this month.
To resolve a question that some of the listeners are having.
Mm-hmm.
Even the new insights of Torah come from Sinai. There's
Of
only
course,
one
yeah.
portion of Torah at Sinai, but every soul received a little pocket, a little deposit of Torah that is that soul's mission to develop and to bring forth to surface over the, and that's the oral Torah, the idea that now it's our turn. We don't have the prophets anymore. So the future development is going to be from the ground up, not from up down, not from the prophets bringing us down from heaven, but rather from us, from deep within our heart. There's a little portal. There's a wellspring of Torah that we need to unearth and develop and bring to the world and enrich the world with the new Torah. It's not the new Torah; it's really the old Torah, but the Torah that was planted within us.
That's a very important idea. It's a critical idea to clarify because, God forbid to suggest that you could create
Yeah,
something
exactly. And
that
again,
isn't right.
this is one of those things I always tell the yeshiva guys, all the things you take for granted, not everyone knows that. And now even some yeshiva guys don't know that. Like,
Mhm.
we can't just concoct our own Torah. And the Midrash says explicitly, if someone has a new insight in Torah in 2025, that was already told to Moshe at Sinai.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. Okay. So moving along. So I mentioned how Usher has. Okay. So now it kind of makes sense. So Usher, a lot of pieces are coming together. Usher is he's reflecting Shevat. So he has this connection with Torah Shabbat Peh. He has all the oil in his territory, which represents Torah Shabbat Peh. Okay. His letters Shemena. Okay, is a letters Mishnah. Okay, Mishnah is Torah Shabbat Peh, right?
The
All of
first work of oral Torah.
first. Yeah. Yes. Right. It all comes from the Mishnayos. After that, it's it's Gemara, but it all flows from Mishnah. And now we understand why in the word Shmena, the word oil is an allusion to Mishnah, because oil is Torah Shabbat, Mishnah is Torah Shabbat. It's all in Usher's territory, so all these pieces are starting to come together. I want to share another insight here. I mentioned how Usher has. There's really two things going on. He has got a lot of oil, as well as his food is rich with oil. Okay, so there's two elements here. I want to point something out. Rav Moshe Wolfson, who, by the way, I also had him in mind when I named my son Moshe because he passed away this year. He several times talks about a very beautiful idea, which is that Eretz Yisrael, all of Eretz Yisrael, every portion of Eretz Yisrael is connected or reflects a certain element of the Torah. Now, for example, he says, I believe, that the Gemara learns out the idea that you can marry a woman with money. You could use, it's called Kiddushay Kesef. You could use money or any object of value. So we do a ring to buy, so to speak, buy a woman, buy a woman's hand of marriage.
Perpetuate the transaction of marriage.
Yeah, right. And you could
Buy
do that.
women, okay?
Yeah,
Try
yeah, we don't,
selling.
I
Don't
know,
try
I know, I
selling
know,
women.
I know.
No
It
one's
doesn't
like that
sound
anymore.
Um, and the Gemara learns it out from Avraham Avinu's transaction when he bought the cave, right? The Ma'aras HaMachpelah. What's the English word for that? The double cave,
Cave of the patriarchs.
the cave of the patriarchs. So, however the Gemara does that, you could learn the Maseches Kedushin to figure that out. But he explains that the secret of the idea of marriage through money, marriage through value, was like hidden in the cave of the patriarchs, because every part of Eretz Yisrael has its part of Torah. And when Avram Avinu acquired that land, it was revealed this Torah concept, and every part of Eretz Yisrael is like that. So here's what I want to suggest: every part of Eretz Yisrael is Torah, but the richness within those fruits, the oil within the products, is the Torah Shebal Peh, through which you can extrapolate those Torah concepts. Okay, now listen to this. The Mishnah in Sota tells us that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we lost the taste of the fruits, the Tam HaPeros. Rabbi Yossi says, as well as the Shuman HaPeros. We also lost the oil of the fruits. What does that mean? Like when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we lost the oil of the fruits. So according to me, what it means is our perception of Torah was diminished. It's actually tragic. It's not a matter of us, not enjoying our apple, our peach compote as much as we used to. It's our actual Torah Shabbat has been diminished. And what struck me, and so this is this term, Af Nitel Shuman HaPeros. And what struck me last night was that Shuman HaPeros is Gematria Torah Shabbat Peh.
Nice.
I
Oh,
see. You want to
classic.
do that? You want to check it out? I think it's off by one, which is always frustrating, but we're allowed to
Okay, well, Shin 306, 346,
396.
416. Oh, I'm sorry.
So
You're
it's
sorry. Sorry,
396.
sorry. 396 is Showman. And then Haperos is spelled 85, 95, 295, and then 695.
And 701. There's a vav.
That's right.
Happy Rose. So it's 701 plus 496.
701, 4. That's a big number. That's 1197?
1097, no?
No, 1197.
Shoot.
Uh,
Come on.
no, is it?
Is it 1 second? I did it in my head, so
We got to keep this in. We got to keep this
no,
in.
no, take it out, take it out, take it out. It's off by very frequently I'm off by 100 because when you do it 396,
Wait, 396? No, you're right.
it's
Sorry, sorry. No,
396.
you are right. Keep it in. Now I'm wrong. I don't care. Yeah, you're right. I did 496. It's
No,
396.
it's 396.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. 1097.
Wait, I'll do Torah Shabbat Pet. So
Okay, Torah, that's 611. We know that.
611.
Sheba'al,
Oh, that
Sheba'al.
would be that's 402.
Why is that 402? 402,
Shabbat
that's right, 402. So that is 1,013. And then
and then
Peh
85.
is 85. That's 1,098. Off
Yeah,
by
so it's
one. Allowed
1097,
to have an
1098, off
allowance
by
of
one.
one. Allowance of one being off by one. Wow. Okay, so Shomen Paris is the Torah Sheba'al Peh.
Okay. Um,
Or what you could do if you want to be cute and say it's just a little bit less Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's a little bit more, but it's the overwhelming majority of Torah Sheba'al Peh. There's a little more of the Torah Sheba'al Peh that has.
yeah, you could do that. I have seen that where it's off by one and they explain why it's off by one. Yeah, I've definitely seen that. Okay, moving along. Um,
Like B'nai Bina, Yimei Shmona, right? Bina is one more than Yavan.
no, yeah, exactly.
To see just a little bit deeper than Yavan.
Okay, so 1 second. So here's what I want to explain now. So the idea of the richness of the fruit is Torah Shabbat Peh, which is happening, which is all going down in Usher's portion. Okay. Now, we know there's one day in Shvat which is uniquely special, and that is Tu B'Shvat, right? Tu B'Shvat Higia Chag Ilanot, the 15th day of Shvat. On the 15th day of Shvat, the Gemara tells us that the Yatsu Rov Gishmei Shana, the majority of the rain has gone out. And now Rashi explains the sap, the sraf bilanos is starting to, I don't know what sap does, but it's starting to go up. Meaning the fruit is starting to develop, right? So most of the rain is out, and now the sap is starting to enrich the fruits. So the way I want to understand that is similar to this idea. These fruits are starting to become enriched. The Torah Shabbat Peh reaches a premium on Tu B'Shvat. Because the whole idea of Shvat is that we're injecting Torah Shabbat Peh into the world, which according to me is the fruits of Eretz Yisrael are becoming rich, saturated with Torah Shabbat Peh. And on Tu B'Shvat, when we know that the fruits are starting to become especially enriched, that's like when it reaches its maximum. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, but now I want to tell you something really cool. Can I?
Let's go.
Will you indulge me? The Or HaChaim HaKadosh says on the words Eila HaDvarim. So that's how the verse begins. Eila HaDvarim Asher Diber Moshe, right? These are the words that Moshe spoke. So he says Eila is Gematria 36. And he said because Moshe Rabbeinu spoke for 36 days. Okay, so he started on the first day of Shevat and he went up until, he died on the 7th of Adar. I guess the Or HaChaim is understanding that he spoke up until the 6th of Adar, and then
Maybe Shvat only has 29 days.
or maybe other way, exactly. So I don't know exactly how to calculate it, but that's what he says, that he spoke for 36 days. Okay, that's nice. So it's a nice little gematria. Ela Devarim, he spoke for 36 days. But what's the point? Why is it important for the Torah to emphasize the number? So here's what I want to suggest. We were going the whole time, we're expressing this idea that this is the month in which Torah Shabbat Peh is starting, Moshe Rabbeinu is starting to become, acclimated to the idea of Torah Shabbat Peh. The Bnei Yissaschar again in Hanukkah speaks a lot about the 36 lights of the menorah, right? There's 31 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 7 plus 8 equals 36. And he explains how there's 36 tractates in the Talmud, right? 36. And he explains how all of Torah Shabbat Peh really works with the number 36, and that's rooted in the 36 hours which the hidden light was illuminated. We're not getting into all that. I think we discussed it Hanukkah time. A few times. Okay, but just take it to the bank that the number 36 is very much connected with Torah Shabbat Peh. So I want to suggest that what the Or Chaim is hinting to here, that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke for 36 days, is that Moshe Rabbeinu was imbuing the power of Torah Shabbat Peh for those 36 days. And again, those are going to be the 36 tractates. That is the number 36, which always is aligned with Torah Shabbat Peh. Now listen, that in itself I think is cool, but every single day would be corresponding to one of the tractates of the Talmud, correct? The first day,
yes.
Brachos, the second day was Shabbos, Erev, and Pesachim.
In the order in which it appears on the bookshelf.
On the bookshelf, right? But that's a real order. So there's an idea that Rav Tzadik Cohen shares, which is that you find interesting Gemaras.
Maybe it's backwards. That's why it was also brachas at the end.
Oh, because brachas?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Who says it's
I mean, maybe you would start at the beginning, right? They would begin Ela Dvarim.
Sometimes we start at the end, and that way we could kind of
okay.
work from the end backwards.
Actually, you know what? Actually, it won't make a difference for. Okay. Oh no, it would make a difference. It would make a difference. Okay, for what I want.
What's the 15th?
So we find there's interesting like Gemaras throughout Shas that are in Mesechtos that have nothing to do with it. So, for example, all of the Gemaras about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash,
yes,
okay, is in tractate Gittin, which is about divorce.
Yes,
right.
You want to propose that because that's a divorce. It's a form of divorce.
Exactly. No, I don't want to propose it. This is real. So this comes from a tzadok or something like that. And he says this about many different Mesechtos. He says, I think he says that the Gemara is about giving the Torah was on Shabbos, is in Maseches Shabbos. Okay, that's pretty obvious because the Torah was given on Shabbos. Okay. But he says like this, there are many Gemaras in Maseches Ksubas, which talk about the great love that the rabbis had for Eretz Yisrael. And really, our whole insight into how great Eretz Yisrael is comes from various Gemaras like Ksubas towards the end, page 110 to 113 probably. So, and he explains because a ksuba is where a husband, he gives over to his wife a certain portion that's allotted to her, and Eretz, in the relation between God and the Jewish people is akin to that of a husband and a wife. And God gave us Eretz Yisrael, in a sense, sort of like a ksuba where a man gives to his husband, and therefore Eretz Yisrael.
A man doesn't give to his husband.
A man gives to his wife. Sorry,
we're progressive, but not that progressive.
No, that was a slip of the tongue. Okay, so it comes out that Maseches Ksubas is the Masechta of Eretz Yisrael. Of course, Ksubas is Gematria Eretz Yisrael.
Wait, what?
It's off by two. It's off by two. Eretz Yisrael is two less than Ksubas. So what I'm tempted to do is add 2 words, which you could do. It's done. So Eretz Yisrael,
a lot of latitude in Gematria.
Yeah, Eretz Yisrael is 832. Ksubas is 834. Okay, so but like this, Ksubas is a 15th Masechta. It is. So it comes out that if I'm right, that on the first day was Brachas, and the second day was Shabbos, and the third day was Erev, and the fourth day was Pesachim, and so on and so forth. He got up to the 15th day, Tu B'Shvat, which is the prime, which is the day of the where the sap is going up in the trees, where the fruits of Eretz Yisrael are being injected with this Torah Shabbat Peh. There's this huge surplus of Kedushas Torah in Eretz Yisrael. That day is going to be the day of Maseches Ksubas, which is the Masechta that discusses the beauty of Eretz Yisrael.
Okay, let's go through this. Brachos is 1, Shabbos is 2, Erevin is 3, Pesachim is 4, Shana is 5, Yoma is 6, Sukkah is 7, Beitza 8, Tainus 9, Megillah 10, Moed Katan 11, Chadiga 12. No, how does that work out? Brachos. Oh, we're skipping Strelem.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
13. And then Yivamis Ksubis is 15.
yeah.
Very interesting. Now, if we start from the end,
And it happens to be, Rabbi Wolbe, that Ksubis is called Shas Katan, right? Because it contains like Gemara, it spans all of Shas. It's like almost a summary of all of Shas, which again, it's like that prime, it's the prime day of Torah Shabbat Peh. It contains all 36.
fascinating.
Okay, so that's what's unique about Tu B'Shvat. So again, we're really talking about all of Shvat, but what's unique about Tu B'Shvat is it's like it's the crux. It's the what did you call it? The capstone? The capstone, right? That was
About
the
how much more time do we need? Because it's 12:03 and the other torch event wants to use the torch Zoom. I told him to filibuster. I said filibuster a little bit.
can I we're almost done.
Okay, let's
Can I,
go.
five
You
minutes.
talk. I'm just gonna give you I'm just nodding on the video. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, Kohanim Gedolim. We said that Usher, his family, his daughters married into Kohanim Gedolim. I think we would explain this as well. Aaron HaKohen, right? He's the one. Remember, we said that Moshe ben Lo ish davar anochi. I'm not a man of Dvar. Hashem said, "Okay, I'll give you Aaron HaKohen. He has the power of the gift of gab. He has the ability to speak those devarim." And in fact, I do have sources, which is that all Kohanim, especially Kohanim Gedolim, inherited that trait from Aaron HaKohen. So it makes sense. Again, Usher being the one who is especially connected with Torah Shabbat Peh, his family will marry into Kohanim Gedolim. We mentioned the dli, right? The
The bucket.
pail with which the water was drawn. I want to suggest, okay, that water is also Torah. In Mayim al Torah, water is a metaphor for Torah. But again, you can't, water in a sense is like fire. You can't really get that much of water with your hands, right? You need a pail to draw it. And Torah Shabbat Peh could be that dli, that pail with which we draw the water.
Mm.
That is the dli of Shvat. So we explained the dli, we explained Usher, and now I want to quickly try to explain the letter Tzadi, okay? The letter of Tzadi that is connected with,
Some people pronounce it Tzadik.
I know, but it really is Tzadi. It's just
Okay.
Tzadi. But you'll see that it is connected to Tzadik, and that's what I want to share. So there is a verse which says, and I do not know the exact translation of the verse on a simple level. It's in Yeshaya somewhere. Miknaf hars from the corner of the land, Zmiros shamanu. We heard Zmiros. Tzvi la tzadik. A deer for a tzadik. So,
Deer as in DER.
ER.
Yeah, right. Two E's. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly explain how, without getting into the simple explanation of what that means, just how it's understood by the Kabbalists. So there's 5 letters. Do you want to just stop here because I'm getting like
Let's go. Just do
okay.
it.
There's 5 letters that are I call them enda letters, meaning
Mansapach.
Manzabach. So it's a double letter. So
It's
mem
an
has
unusual thing, but the way I explain it to Americans is that for some reason, when you write a capital letter, like use capital letters only at the beginning of a word. So new sentence, capital letter, right? A proper noun, capital letter, and so on. So you make a different letter, a bigger letter at the beginning of the word. Just imagine a capital letter at the end of the word, okay? Just imagine. Just imagine.
okay,
I
but
know
it
it's a different
only
system,
applies right, but it only
but
applies
it
to
only
5 letters.
applies to 5 letters. That's right.
Mem nun tzadi pei chof. So he points out the word miknaf from the corner is 4 of those letters. Mem chof nun fei. The one that's missing is the tzadi. The tzadi. So he explains, this is Rav Sham Shashpoli talking, even though for some
Your
reason I
favorite.
think I've seen it in the name of the Arizal. Sham Shashpoli is a very great Kabbalist, murdered by the Cossacks. So I don't know if I should be attributing it to him or the Arizal. Either way, both are good. So he says like this, each one of these 5 letters need to they need to be, I don't know how to say, resurrected. They need to have some sort of tikkun for the geula to come.
Rectified.
And sorry?
Rectified, maybe?
Rectified, and these 4 mem chaf nun fei were rectified. already. It's the tzadi that is missing, and tzvi la tzadik. Tzvi could mean in Aramaic, it means yearning. That's what it means. It means ratzon is tzvi. So we're yearning for the tzaddik. We're yearning for the rectification of the tzaddik.
So we're 4/5 of the way done. The miknaf from the edge, that's already done, and we're yearning for the fifth one, the tzaddik or the tzadi.
That's right. Now, the Zohar in Parashat Vayelech quotes the same pasuk, okay, quotes the exact same pasuk, and it says, very interesting thing. It says, when they entered Eretz Yisrael, and the Aron was in front of them, the Jewish people heard from the corner of Eretz Yisrael, shiros v'tishbachos, praise, song and praise, about the tzaddik, Tzivila tzaddik, and that tzaddik is Moshe Rabbeinu. They heard like praise for Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's the Tzivila tzaddik. The yearning for the tzaddik is the praise for Moshe Rabbeinu. So you see from here that this tzaddik is two things we're learning. It's the thing that we're yearning for, and it's also a reference to Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, I want to combine these two ideas. The Or Chaim HaKadosh many times quotes the Zohar, which teaches that Mashiach will have the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so we're yearning for the tzaddik. We're yearning for that final letter that needs to be rectified, and we're also yearning for Moshe Rabbeinu, who's called the tzaddik, but it's one and the same. We're yearning for that. The tzaddik basically represents that final geula, and that final geula is Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the final Mashiach. So my point here is that Shevat is the month in which Moshe Rabbeinu is giving over his essence. He's finally sharing with us all that Torah that he had pent up inside of him. He's finally sharing. He's giving over his heart and soul to the Jewish people in the month of Shevat. So Shevat being the letter Tzadi, maybe, perhaps, is that Tzadi, that Tzvila Tzadi, that yearning for the Tzaddik of Moshe Rabbeinu. And we merit that in the month of Shevat when he gets up and he teaches all of that Torah. He shares it all with us, with Devarim finally able to communicate it through his speech. And that is just about it. That's
Like,
what I
we
want to
say that maybe the bucket is what we have to just come with a bucket because it's all flowing out. There's well springs that are available. Just bring the bucket, load it up.
I think you could say that.
I like it. This was amazing. Lots of fascinating insights. I feel like I didn't do my job well enough to kind of slow you down and try to explain every piece. But I appreciate you joining here. And again, it was poorly timed because I already hear the people next door in the other room here in the Torch Center. They're all impatiently lounging about, waiting for us to get off the Zoom so that we can simulcast the class next door on the Torch Zoom account. So forgive me for that. But thank you so much, Rabbi Botnick. Botnick@gmail.com. Send your questions to him. This was marvelous. A hearty Torch Center Mazel Tov to the Botnicks on the birth of their son Moshe. May he become a great Torah scholar and a fascinating and fabulous and terrific and delightful person and Jew like his parents and his grandparents, and bring lots of joy to the whole family and to the Almighty in heaven. And we should only hear good news from you. And you're welcome back now. Adar's on deck. You're welcome back. We're back in full swing. Rabbi Botnick on the month of Shvat and the secrets of Asher and oil and high priests and words and the developments that happen in this time and the sap and the fruits and the words and Aaron and Torah Sheba'al Peh. Unbelievable. And the
Can I just end with one final thought? I forgot to say. I think 1 second.
Bring it home.
The first word in all of Mishnayos, Rabbi Wolbe, is Me'emosai. That's how the very first Mishnah in Brachos begins. Word Me'emosai. Me'emosai is Gematria, Usher. Exactly. So
nice.
the token to
What
Usher.
a way to send it off.
Yeah.
Send me your comments, your questions, and feedback. RabbiWolbe.com. Have a great Shabbos, Rabbi Botnick. And until next time, this is Yaakov Wolbe signing off from the Torch Center in Houston, Texas. Thank you so much, Rabbi Shmuel Botnick.
Okay. All the best.